Good morning and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing some meals in jars as part of that 365 jar challenge over at North Texas Vegetable Garden, canning a little bit of everything. Jill has sent out a challenge that we are to this year put together 365 meals in jars. So I've got some pork ham roast that are fresh. I got them out of the freezer, but I bought these from a nice young couple, Dan and Rachel, that live near me. They're subscribers, but they're homesteaders and they're young with young babies, and I'm so excited for them, and I really hope to go over and help them this spring get a garden going. But he raised these pigs, and so I bought some of this meat from him. So what I'm going to do is we're going to can these for meals. And I've got a pork ham roast. I've got three pork shoulder roast. And we're going to cut off all this fat, cube it, and then pack it raw in jars. Then you can use this in recipes later. So it's going to be so good. And this pork is delicious. I just finished a pork butt in the crock pot last night. It is so good. I put a rub on it, and I'll show you how I did all that. And I was going to pressure can this, but y'all, this meat is too tender to pressure can. It is perfect. It just melts in your mouth. It's so good. I'm going to show you how to do that in a crock pot. Oh, but if I were to pressure can this, it would be mush. So I really let it cook too long in the crock pot, but there's no worry. I'm going to bag this up in baggies, Ziploc baggies, and put this in the freezer for meals, because all you have to do is thaw it, put it on the stove, heat it up, put it on a bun, or I can put it in Brunswick stew. This morning my daddy had a big bowl of grits, and he put this chopped barbecue on top of it. So there's so many things I can do, but I don't want to ruin it by pressure canning it, because it is really cooked down to perfection. And it has to pressure can for 75 minutes, so then it's going to be mush. So that's a tip. If you're going to want to do barbecue, try not to cook it to death like I did. Let the remaining cooking go in the pressure canner and finish it off. But I'm telling you, this is so good. We're going to have this for lunch with some slaw and some baked beans. It's going to be so good. And if I pressure can Boston baked beans, then I can take a jar of this, or a package of this out of the freezer, the Boston baked beans, pour it all together, and you've got such a good meal. So many different things you can do. So let's get started with pressure canning, raw pack method, the ham and pork shoulder roast. Let's get going. Okay, most of the time meat that is partially frozen is so much easier to cut. And we've got to cut all of that fat away from this pork before we can pressure can it. Now that fat and skin can be saved to make render down later and make lard. But for this video, I'm just focusing on the pork. So I'm going to cut off all the fat, and then we're going to take a sharper knife and then start cutting the meat into chunks. Now the bones and some of that fat I'm going to put in the crock pot and let it cook for about 10 hours, and then I'm going to have some really delicious ham broth that I can use for soups or cooking dried beans. So there's really no waste to this. You could make lard out of that fat. The bones can make a delicious, healthy broth, and then of course the meat that we're going to pressure can. So any places you see that white fat, that needs to be trimmed away. We do not want to pressure can fat. Okay, I've got all of the 4 pork roast chopped. I've got my canner with some hot water in it. I've got my jars ready. So now it's time to start packing the jars. There's the crock pot that's going to be cooking for about 10 hours to give me some good broth. And I've got my pint jar sitting over in another canner staying nice and hot. Got everything set up to can. And this is how I process this pork. I've got some boiling water if I need to add a little bit to the jars, and then I have water for the lids. So here is my setup. I like everything clean and ready to go. Hot jars, hot liquid, and the water in the canner is hot. So I'm just going to pack these jars, not pack them heavily because you want the middle part of the jar to process evenly. So I'm just going to push these kind of lightly down. Then I'm going to debubble those. And in the past, I've raw packed without adding any liquid. But this time, I'm going to try to add just a little bit of hot water because sometimes when it processes, it leaves some of your cubes of meat out of the liquid and they turn brown. So I'm just kind of pushing these cubes in, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of hot water and then debubble again, and hopefully this will keep that from happening in my jars. Always leave a 1-inch headspace at the top of the jar. So the next jar I did not add quite as much water, and I think I've got it down now. I'm going to take out a few pieces because I do want a good 1-inch headspace, because this meat does have natural juices in it and they are going to come out of that pork and fill up the jar. There we go. So now I'm going to take 1/2 teaspoon of canning salt and put that in the jar, and then wipe the rim very well with some vinegar on a paper towel. And the reason you do that is to remove any grease or meat bits from the lid that could keep you from getting a nice seal. Now again, this is the raw pack method, but I am using hot jars and hot water in the water bath canner. Then just put on your lid and ring and you're ready to go. Okay, we're going to do one more jar for you. There's the hot jar. I'm going to be packing in the pork cubes, leaving a 1-inch headspace, just kind of lightly pressing them down because I do want that core to get nice and done in the pressure canner. Okay, now I'm just going to run my spatula down the sides, get out any air, and then I do add a little bit of liquid, just a tiny bit. And I can tell you now, after this canned, all of my jars have liquid covering all the meat, so that tip did work. I do not have any meat sticking up out of the liquid. So same process, add the salt, wipe the rim, and then put it in the canner and you're good to go. Alright, the canner is full. I have 7 pint jars in the canner. I'm going to be putting on the lid and start the canning process. Now I've got the canner setting on my little electric burner. This is the way I like to pressure can, and always check your seal. Make sure your seal's in good shape. Make sure that vent hole, you can see through it. These are just habit things that I like to do just to make sure I'm going to have a successful canning session. So then I put it on the canner, match up the arrows, lock it in place, and then I'm going to wait for a good steady stream of steam to come out of that vent. This process takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get a good, nice, steady stream of steam. You can see I've got a nice, steady stream of steam coming out, so I set the timer for 10 minutes. put on the weight, and now I let the pressure get to 11 pounds of pressure. And once it reaches 11 pounds, then I'm going to set my timer for 75 minutes. Now I just wanted to share with you, if you do not have this Ball Blue Book of Guide to Preserving, I would go get one today, because there are so many great recipes in here for meals in jars. I am going to be attempting the Boston baked beans. I don't need to buy anything. I already have all those ingredients in my pantry. But there's just chopped full of really good recipes that I'm going to be trying. I have done some of these already, but beef and wine sauce, that looks delicious. There's a bean soup. There's just so many great ideas. So that's just a little tip that if you're new to this, get one of these books. It is so helpful for newbies and for those of us that have been canning for years. While that's canning, I'm going to go back and share with you how I cooked that Boston butt in the crock pot. So I purchased a Boston butt when they were 99 cents a pound. I think I paid about $9 for this nice one. And the first step is to apply a rub. Now I do make my own rub, but got a lot going on here in the house, so I'm just putting on a store-bought rub that I picked up during Christmas, and I'm just going to rub this whole pork butt all the way around with this rub. And this rub has brown sugar, cayenne pepper, salt, pepper, garlic, but I'm just coating it very well all the way around, and then I'm going to be putting that in the crock pot, the fat side down. I did add 1 quart of water to this, and then I cooked it all night for about 10 hours. And I'm going to be shredding the meat on this tray, and it is so delicious, y'all. I just took 2 forks and just started shredding this delicious meat. Now, if I do this again and want to pressure can it, I'm not going to cook it as long as I did. But this is perfect. We are so enjoying this meat. And after I cooked it, I put a little bit in a pan and reheated it and added some of our favorite barbecue sauce. And we had a delicious lunch of barbecue pork, beans, and slaw. So the timer has gone off. I have let the pressure canner come down to 0 pressure. I always set another timer for 5 minutes, then take the weight off, crack the lid, and now it's probably been about 15 to 20 minutes since it has come down to 0 pressure, and I'm taking out the jars one at a time, and they all sealed. The liquid goes all the way over the meat, which is really what I was hoping for, and it turned out perfect. So I've got 7 jars on my way to my 365 jar challenge. And this is going to be delicious for any type of meal. There are casseroles you can use this in. You can use this in soups. I can add barbecue sauce to it and make more barbecue. There's just so many ideas that you can do with this. So I'm really tickled the way it turned out. Okay, so got 7 jars of processed canned pork ready for meals. So I'm going to be logging this in my preparedness journal section, and I will do a count because I'm trying to get to 365 jars, and I'm off to a good start today. I've got 7 done, and I'm going to be working diligently to get more canned. I think my next thing is going to be the Boston beans. I'm going to try my hand at that. That's something new. And like I said, get that Blue Ball book of preserving. It's got some great ideas in it. So I'm going to get this logged in my notebook, and I'm going to leave a link below to Jill on her channel where this challenge began, and I'm also going to share with you my playlist of canning. I've got lots of recipes and videos, so I'll link that below. If you're new to canning and you just like some ideas, you can go follow along on that playlist. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a very blessed day.